One of the best budget decks this format is Virtual World. What is up, guys? This is tcgsam here, and in today's video I'm coming at you guys with an updated budget Virtual World deck profile for the post-June 2023 ban list. So like I mentioned, this deck is pretty good value considering how little it costs, and is very flexible because it allows you to play a myriad of different cards in your main deck and extra deck, and can just be a great toolbox, and has tools to deal with both combo and control matchups. So with that being said, let's just hop straight into the deck profile. We're going to kick things off with the Virtual World monsters. Of course, we're playing 3 copies of Lulu. Just a quick explanation, all the Virtual Worlds essentially have the same effect in hand, where you can target another Virtual World card you control, and then send one Virtual World card with a different type. So like if you target a monster, you can send a spell or trap, and then summon that monster out, and it's all of them have like bonus effects on top of that. So Lulu's bonus effect is to search the third type, which is definitely the best out of all of them. She's also a tuner, which means you can go into your synchro plays with her. And next up is 3 copies of GG. I really like GG because it guarantees you follow up every single turn by adding during the end phase. And it's also important to have a mix of non-tuners as well, because you don't only want to be going into XCs if you have like too many tuners, for example. You want to be able to access your synchro plays. And then for the 6s, we're playing 3 copies of Lily. This one just lets you dump an extra one to the graveyard and can help set up your graveyard for your future plays. Level 6 is good because a lot of your best rank 6s are in your extra deck, and a lot of your high level synchros can be made using Lily very easily. And then 3 copies of Lao Lao. Lao Lao you can say is like maybe the worst, quote unquote worst one to open, because if you don't have one Virtual World in your grave already, it doesn't do anything. But I'm maxed out on all the names that can target in hand, because this deck always needs these names to play. So like even if you have Lao Lao plus another card, you can still play the game at the very least, even though it isn't the best since you don't get its bonus effect. But yeah, you definitely want to max out on Lao Lao so you always have access to these Virtual Worlds. Now we're playing 2 copies of Nian Nian. So Nian Nian's a unique one where if you summon a level 3 while it's in the grave, you can summon it back, and then it becomes a tuner. So it has the flexibility of being either a tuner or a non-tuner, and it's usually one of the best monsters to send off of your other Virtual World monsters, just because whenever you summon a 3, you just summon it back as an extender for free in the grave. And when it's banished, you can shuffle one of your banished cards back into your deck, which includes face downs. So if you get hit with like Kashtira Unicorn, Kashtira Rise Heart, or like use your Pot of Desires, you can still shuffle them back into the deck. So it's okay if those get banished off your deck. It's not really a big deal. And then for the Virtual World Gates, which is the other part of the deck, essentially these are like spells and traps for Virtual Worlds. And Kowloon is probably the best one because it allows you to place one directly from your deck in face-up spell and trap zone. So the ones that you're going to be placing are either Qinglong, which is on-field effect is actually pretty decent as well, because you can banish a Virtual World from the grave and target a face-up monster your opponent controls to negate it, so it can force out an interruption. But its grave effect is the most important one, where if it's in the grave, you can banish it, add a Virtual World monster from your deck to your hand, then discard a card. So this is the one that you're always dumping off of like the Virtual World monsters to get into your other Virtual World names. So you definitely want to max out on this. Even if you draw like multiple copies of it, you can discard it, or just playing it on the field is actually pretty good for its effect as well. And then playing 2 copies of Chuche. So Chuche is the trap card of the deck. It's one of the best interruptions that you can end on, because it's just a face-up pop every single turn as long as you shuffle 2 banished Virtual World cards with different names. So you banish cards, of course, with like Qinglong, for example, and your Nian Nian will get banished when it leaves the field. And even Chuche itself has a graveyard effect, where you can banish itself to manipulate the level of one of your Virtual Worlds by 3. So that's really great, not only to fill up your banish zone, but also give you more flexibility. Your going first turn is going to end on this most of the time, and this is a pretty good disruption paired with your boss monster Virtual World Shenzhen, because then it's just banishing one card on the field essentially. Chuche also recycles your resources and gives you a great matchup against like those more slower control decks. So definitely want to play at least 2 for that reason. You don't want to play 3 because it is not great to draw, because turn 1 you're not able to place it face up on the field without Kowloon, so you rather just search this out later on in your combo. And then lastly, 1 copy of Shanwu. So Shanwu's on-field effect isn't really too relevant. Yeah, it can come up, but you probably don't ever want to set this card. Its graveyard effect is the relevant one, to where you can banish it and target a Virtual World monster in your grave and special summon it. There's a cool interaction with quick play spells as well. If you have this in your grave and the only card in your hand is quick play spell, you can activate this to target a Virtual World monster, chain the quick play spell, and then on resolution you actually don't have to discard, because you only need to have a card in hand at the time you're activating this. So it can be good to know know that just so you don't have to end up discarding your card to resolve this effect. That's going to do it for the Virtual World engine itself. And moving on to the other part of the deck, 2 copies of Small World I think is pretty decent in this deck. You always want to get to your Virtual World Lulu. Virtual World Lulu is incredibly strong, and she's the one that you pretty much always want to go into. This is great because it helps you play around a card like Ash Blossom and Ghost Bell. So for example, if your Virtual World name in hand gets stopped by Ash Blossom or Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, then you can just banish that one to search another name you haven't used that turn, and it can help you bridge into that. We also play a Kaiju in this deck, so this is a going second card as well, which can help you break a card like a Rise Heart, for example. So I think double Small World is really good for that reason. You could play 3. I think 3 might be a little excessive because you don't necessarily want too many cards that are actually straight up -1s in card economy, because you do need to discard a lot of cards in this deck. So I figure 2 is a good number, but you definitely don't have to play this. You can just bump up a card like Emergency Teleport to 3. I cut it down to 2 because I wanted to play the Small World, but you definitely don't have to. Emergency Teleport's a great extender. It can help you grab a tuner in Lulu or a non-tuner in Yan Yan. There's not much to really say about that. It's just a pretty great extender overall. And then we're playing 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Should this be Pot of Prosperity? Probably yes, but this is a budget deck. Like I said, it doesn't matter too much if your cards get banished even face down, because if you banish Yan Yan, you can shuffle them back into your deck even if they're face down. And Desires just is great for helping you with consistency and digging you into your extenders and combo pieces. And then for the last part of the deck, this is completely like personal preference, but this is sort of just an example of what I might run in this deck. It's like, yes, I know Impermanence not necessarily the most budget card, so you definitely don't have to play it, or any of these for that matter. I'm just showing an example of what you can play, but essentially the Kaiju is here for the Small World, and it's a wind monster, so it's a bridge that you can use to go from like a wind Virtual World to Lulu, which is really good, or you can bridge to this to out like a most problematic monster on the field. Gamma is also interesting because it's such a powerful card still, and no one's gonna respect it. So I think having the 1 of Gamma in your deck is totally fine. It's okay if you draw Driver sometimes, because like you can just discard it with Qinglong. You're pretty much always discarding in your combo, so it doesn't really matter too much if you hard draw. This is just a free discard fodder. But if you can resolve Gamma, that's super powerful, because as a level 2 tuner, you can turn this plus one of your like a Stardust Charge Warrior or something into a Crystal Wing, which is huge, and then you could turn the level 6 body into like another Synchro play or an Xyz play, which is why resolving Gamma in this deck is so strong, and I think for that reason you still want to play it. Play cards like Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, Dark Ruler No More, or just whatever cards you really want, whatever hand traps are the best for your local area. Just a few things to note, like I think this was a decent balance between like hand traps, because the Infinite Impermanence is also needed for your Ultimate Zolkin, because you want spells and traps to be able to set. And while cards like Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse can sort of do that, Impermanence's flexibility is that it's a hand trap as well, so you can play it on the very first turn. So I think for that reason I decided to play that, but like I said, you can just play whatever like fits your budget in here and whatever you feel like is the best. So that's going to do it for the main deck, and moving on to the extra deck now, we're playing 1 copy of Shen Shen, so this is your boss monster, and its effect can still be pretty decent against some of the other decks out there, particularly the slower and the mid-range ones. Just essentially being like a macro Cosmos. It's like a Kashtira or Rise Heart at home, but it does carry the Virtual World name, and it's very easy to make. Plus this comes back from the graveyard, which is something that a Rise Heart can't do, so that's pretty cool. Summoning this and pairing it with a card like Chuche just means Chuche is able to spot banish any card on the field, which is important, and this is, like I said, just good against certain decks out there still in the meta. And then we're playing for the other 9-1 copy of Vermilion Dragon Mech. Not only is this good utility going second, but there are also some combo lines where you actually have to go into Vermilion to like get into your plays. And then for the 6s now, we're playing 1 copy of Charge Warrior, 1 copy of Coral Dragon. And these are some of the best like level 6 synchros out there. You don't have to play Tri-Edge Master because Tri-Edge Master doesn't actually really do anything when you use 2 level 3s to make it. It becomes like a tuner or something, I think, which you don't really need in this deck. So you want the draw off of Charge Warrior instead. Coral Dragon's the same idea, except it's a tuner, meaning in some hands, if you open like more non-tuners, for example, and both of them give you a draw, which is good to replenish your hand when you're discarding it for your combo. And then when playing 1 copy of Virtual World Beast Juju, so Juju is incredibly good going second, and importantly, it carries the Virtual World name, so you can target it with your other Virtual World monsters to keep playing. And then I'm playing one copy of Money My Dragon. So Money My Dragon is used in the combo where you go Ultimate Zulkin, and Money My Dragon acts as a fusion spell to cheat out some of the best fusion monsters in the game, which I'll show later on. And also do stay tuned for the test hand video / combo tutorial, which will be coming out after this. You'll be able to see how we utilize Money My Dragon in this deck. And then next up is one copy of Ultimate Zulkin and one copy of Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Ultimate Zulkin is incredibly easy to make in this deck. You have so many level 6 tuners and non-tuners. And it's also one of the reasons why we want a bunch of spells and traps in our decks, so we can summon out Crystal Wing as early as possible in our combo. There are times where we can play around Nibiru, even though it's not super popular at the moment. Just having that option is incredibly good. And Crystal Wing's still a very, very menacing monster. And then next up for the Xyz monsters, we are only playing one rank 3, that being number 49 Fortune Tune. Essentially, this is just fodder to go into Zeus. My thought process was you don't want to commit too much if you're Zeusing your opponent, because you still need cards on your board to target with your virtual names. I think Fortune Tune is probably the best rank 3 to facilitate the Zeus, and a lot of decks actually can't handle like stopping this from hitting them, so this is just a great way to go into your Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. And next up for the 6s, we're playing one Stellar Ptolemy M7. This is, I guess, like the flex spot. I personally like this card a lot because you have the option to add back resources from your grave, either for follow-up or like hand traps like Ash Blossom, again, where in matchups where it's particularly good. Virtual World Phoenix Fan is one of the best rank 6s, I think, almost ever. I really like this card. Where you're able to detach 2 materials and target one face-up card your opponent controls and one card in their graveyard and manage both of them. So that's incredibly good because you not only out something from the field, but also from the grave, which can take away your opponent's follow-up a lot of the times. And then it also has a neat floating effect, is if your opponent like attacks into it or destroys it, you can summon 2 virtual worlds from your deck, which is nice. And then I'm playing one copy of Utopia Beyond. This may seem like a weird choice, but its main use is, since you don't have to detach materials to get its main effect, you can just easily slap a Gaia Dragon on top of it and then go into a Zeus right after for a 4 material Zeus. So you have 2 sends with it, and Gaia Dragon just facilitates that. Gaia Dragon's also needed, I think, because Fan detaches 2 materials from it, and you always want to guarantee yourself to be able to have a Zeus after. You can just slap this on top, attack, and then you have a 2 material Zeus at the very least. So that's the reason why I played those. Of course, Zeus, like I said, you could play a second Zeus. It will be a little bit pricier, but I think one you can get away with because there's no more Mind Hacker in the format now. And then finally, the fusion monster of choice I played is Invoked Caliga. It's going to be Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, but Dragoon isn't necessarily the most budget friendly. And I personally don't like Dragoon in this deck because you're still losing to the same cards, kind of like Dark Ruler No More. Like, yeah, it does protect you against evenly, but the problem I found with Dragoon is this: you're just rarely going to have cards in your hand that A, like you want to discard, and B, just cards in your hand in general. Sometimes because you need to set stuff for Zulkin, you need to discard a bunch of cards for your virtual rolls, so it won't necessarily always be live. Whereas a card like Caliga is incredibly good against those combo decks. It pretty much forces your opponent to have Dark Ruler or evenly matched, because if they don't, your 2-chase is just going to be able to protect Caliga from being run over by any monster. So that's going to do it for the deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Do stay tuned for the test hand / combo video, which is coming out after this. You guys will be able to see some of the combos and how this deck can still make plays despite being a budget deck. With that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.